There's a difference between being near someone and being wanted by them. On March 13th, 2026, Punch learned that difference all over again. He was in the enclosure. The troop was around him. Technically, he wasn't alone. But if you watched long enough, you'd see something most people missed. Physical proximity doesn't mean emotional connection. And for a young macaque who'd spent months on the outside, that gap felt as wide as ever. This is what happened when Punch tried to close it. The morning started the way most mornings did now. Punch sat near the climbing structure, the stuffed orangutan pressed against his chest. Around him, the troop moved through their routines, grooming sessions in the corner, brief scuffles over food, the usual rhythm of macaque life. Punch wasn't hiding anymore. He wasn't tucked behind barriers or avoiding sight lines. He was there, visible, part of the physical space. The sun filtered through the enclosure's canopy, casting shifting shadows across the ground. Morning feeding had just finished, and the troop was settling into the calmer hours of the day. But watch what happened when he moved. Around 9:30 a.m., Punch set the toy down. That alone was significant. For weeks, that plush had been his anchor, the one constant in an unstable world. Letting go of it, even for a moment, meant he was trying something different. He took 3 steps toward a mid-ranking female grooming near the water feature. His posture was low, non-threatening. In macaque language, he was signaling submission, acceptance, a willingness to fit in. The female glanced up, brief eye contact. Then she turned her head and shifted her body slightly away. Not aggressive, not a threat display, just disinterest. She went back to grooming, her focus entirely on the other monkey beside her. Her fingers moved through the fur with practiced ease, never pausing, never acknowledging that Punch was still standing there. The other monkey leaned into her touch, eyes half closed in contentment. Punch stood there for a few seconds. His tail twitched once, a small movement, barely noticeable, unless you were watching closely. Then he walked back to the toy and picked it up again. The distance he covered couldn't have been more than 10 feet, but it might as well have been miles. That moment tells you everything you need to know about where Punch was on March 13th. He wasn't being attacked, he wasn't being chased, but he also wasn't being accepted. The troop had learned to tolerate his presence, but tolerance isn't the same as belonging. And for a species that thrives on social bonds, that distinction matters more than most people realize. Here's what people watching from the outside often misunderstand. They see Punch in the same space as the others and assume integration is happening. But integration isn't about location. It's about interaction. It's about grooming invitations, play signals, shared food access, physical touch. Those are the currencies of macaque society. And on this day, Punch wasn't earning any of them. He was like someone standing at the edge of a party, present but not invited, visible but not seen. By mid-morning, he tried again. This time he approached a juvenile, closer to his own age. Juveniles are usually more flexible, less locked into hierarchy. If Punch was going to find an opening, this was his best chance. He moved slowly, the toy still in one hand. The juvenile was playing with a length of rope, flipping it around, biting the frayed end. The play looked almost chaotic, but there was a rhythm to it, a pattern that only made sense to another young monkey. Punch got within 2 feet. He reached out, not toward the juvenile, but toward the rope. A play invitation. The most basic form of social bonding in young primates. His fingers stretched forward, tentative, waiting for some kind of response. The juvenile looked at him. For a moment, it seemed like something might happen. Their eyes met. The rope hung slack between them. The juvenile's posture shifted slightly, as if considering whether to engage. Then an adult male vocalized from across the enclosure. Not loud, not a warning call, just a low grunt. The juvenile immediately dropped the rope and moved toward the adult. No hesitation, no backward glance. Within seconds, the juvenile was already being groomed by the older male, the play session forgotten. Punch was left standing alone, his hand still extended. He didn't chase, he didn't vocalize, he just pulled his hand back, tucked the toy under his arm, and walked to the far side of the enclosure. That's where he stayed for the next hour. Visitors passed by the glass, some pointed, some took photos. A few children pressed their faces close, trying to get Punch's attention. Punch didn't seem to notice any of them. His world had narrowed to the small patch of ground beneath him and the toy in his arms. This is the part that's hard to watch if you've been following Punch's story. He was doing everything right. His body language was appropriate. His approach was non-threatening. He was following the social script that should, in theory, get him accepted. But macaque troops don't work on theory. They work on history, on established bonds, on trust built over time. And Punch was still the outsider, the one who didn't grow up in the group, the one whose mother rejected him, whose early months were spent in isolation. whose only consistent companion was a stuffed toy that didn't belong in a monkey enclosure at all. By early afternoon, the pattern repeated. Punch would move toward the group. He'd get close. Someone would shift away or ignore him or respond to a different monkey's call. And Punch would retreat. Not dramatically, not with visible distress, just quietly. He'd go back to his corner, back to the toy, back to the only relationship that never rejected him. Each attempt looked almost identical to the last, like he was running the same experiment over and over, hoping for a different result. Here's the question no one wants to ask, but everyone's thinking, how long can this go on? Punch was eating. He was healthy. The keepers had done their job in terms of physical care. But social deprivation in primates isn't just an emotional issue. It's a developmental one. Young macaques learn critical skills through play, through grooming, through observation of older troop members. They learn conflict resolution, mating behavior, parenting. All of it comes from being embedded in a social network. These aren't optional skills. They're survival mechanisms that get passed down through direct interaction. Without them, a monkey can survive physically but struggle to function socially for the rest of its life. Punch was watching from the outside. Around 3 p.m., something different happened. One of the younger females, not quite adult, sat down near the water feature. She wasn't doing anything in particular, just resting. Her breathing was steady, her posture relaxed. She picked at something on her arm, casual, unhurried. Punch had been sitting about 10 feet away. He didn't approach. He just stayed where he was, the toy in his lap, his eyes on her. She didn't leave. For 20 minutes, they occupied the same general space without interaction. No grooming, no play, no physical contact, but also no rejection. She didn't move away, she didn't signal discomfort, she just existed near him. The water trickled in the background. Other monkeys called from different parts of the enclosure, but in that small corner, there was something almost peaceful. The tension that had marked Punch's earlier attempts was absent. He wasn't trying to engage, he was just there. It wasn't much. But for Punch, it might have been the closest thing to acceptance he'd felt all day. Then another monkey approached, an adult female, and the younger one got up and followed her. The space emptied again. The moment dissolved as quickly as it had formed. The adult female didn't even glance in Punch's direction, and the younger female fell into step behind her without hesitation. Punch stayed where he was. By the time the keepers began evening routines, Punch had tried 5 separate approaches. None resulted in sustained interaction. None led to grooming or play. He ended the day the way he started it. Physically present, socially isolated, clutching the one object that couldn't walk away from him. The keepers moved through their tasks, refilling water stations, distributing evening enrichment items. They glanced at Punch occasionally, their expressions neutral, but their concern evident in how long their gazes lingered. Here's what the research says about situations like this. Macaques are incredibly social, but they're also incredibly hierarchical. A young monkey in Punch's position, without maternal support, without early bonding, faces an uphill battle. The troop doesn't owe him acceptance. They operate on their own social rules, and those rules prioritize established relationships over new ones. Outsiders have to prove their worth, and that process can take months, sometimes years. Some never make it at all. Some monkeys in Punch's position eventually break through. They find a low-ranking ally. They prove their value through grooming or resource sharing. Slowly, painfully, they carve out a place. Others never do. They remain peripheral members. Tolerated but never integrated, existing on the edge of the group for years. The difference often comes down to factors no one can control. Timing, troop composition, individual personalities. Which path was Punch on? On March 13th, it was impossible to say. What was clear was this: he was trying. Every approach, every lowered head, every moment he set the toy down and reached toward another monkey, he was trying. The troop just wasn't ready to meet him halfway, and no amount of good intentions from keepers or concerned viewers could force that acceptance. It had to come from within the troop itself. That's the hardest part of rehabilitation, the part that can't be engineered or scheduled. As the enclosure lights dimmed and the monkeys settled into their evening spots, Punch found his usual corner. The stuffed orangutan was back in his arms. Around him, the troop huddled in small clusters, grooming, touching, reinforcing the bonds that held them together. The soft sounds of their movements filled the space, a reminder of everything Punch didn't have. Somewhere in the middle of the group, a mother cradled her infant. The contrast was impossible to ignore. Punch watched. Then he turned toward the wall, the toy pressed against his chest, and closed his eyes. He was in the enclosure. He was with the troop. But he was still, in the ways that mattered most, alone. Tomorrow, the keepers would try something new, a different configuration, a different strategy, because leaving Punch in this limbo, day after day, wasn't sustainable. Something had to change. The question was what and how, and whether any intervention could bridge the gap that Punch couldn't cross on his own. The question was whether the troop would allow it. If you want to see what happened next, subscribe and turn on notifications. Punch's story isn't over, and the next update might be the one that finally shifts everything.